Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Board Game Dads. My name is Anthony, and today is a very special episode because I am joined by not one, but two fellow board game dads. We've got Chris Barrows from the Tabletop Express and Eric over at the Meeples Republic. Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do with board games on the internets?
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for having me. You've been over on my channel a few times now, and I know you can continue to be there, and I'm grateful for that. At the Tabletop Express, really focused on the fun of board games, introducing modern board gaming to some, and just reminding people how much fun it is in other cases. And the biggest thing that I try to do over at the channel is kind of bring a behind the scenes perspective and some feedback on why you might want to play a game, as well as the opportunity to meet some creators. We've had some great people over there. Most recently, Jimmy Stegmeyer, Shem Phillips, and Taylor. Taylor was on, who's got a new Kickstarter coming on. Darkness, I believe, is the title, coming up in just a few days. So Kickstarters to established artists and designers, and so ton of fun. And I hope you'll come join me over there. But really, I'm just excited to be here because you spend so much time over on my channel. Now I'm getting here.
Yeah, it's nice to get a change of scenery, even though it's the same room, but that's okay. Eric, what about you? What goes over there? What goes on over there, I should say, at the Meeples Republic?
The Meeples Republic is my Instagram account, and I take pictures of whatever I'm playing, and sometimes I try to throw a little bit of fun in there as well. I got some followers, got some content to put out.
Over 1,000 followers.
That's true. And I'm still pretty new to the game, so I'm still learning what I'm doing.
Yeah, you're doing some cool stuff over there, though. So I brought two of these great minds here to add to my third great mind, and we've got three minds, and we're talking about a anniversary of sorts of the quarantine. So came up with the clever name of Quarantiniversary. This is our Quarantiniversary episode, coming up on a year of this whole pandemic, lockdown, quarantine, COVID thing. And it really did change a lot of stuff, obviously. And we're focusing on how it changed our board gaming habits and how it changed the hobby a little bit. But start off with how this sort of sunk in for you, right? So, Chris, when did this whole thing, feel real or, out of place? When did that realization kind of come?
I remember I was at work and they were telling us we're going to go work from home for an extended period of time. And as someone who'd been trying to get more and more work from home, and the company supported that, so it was coming slowly over time. I said, okay, I can do this. I can work from home, and this will happen. Maybe I can do this even on a longer time frame. But that's not what I intended, And I sit back and I say, wow, like it's kind of it's been life changing in so many ways. And for me, I think the thing that hit was I got a call, in particular on the board game side of things. I will say I got a call that the library club that I run, the board game club at the Verona Library, wasn't going to be able to meet in person. And I think that's when reality struck on two levels. So yes, for the conversation board games, but honestly, that was like, wow, like this thing is not going away. They don't know when this is going to end. And that for me was the day. And that was probably early April, late March, early April, sometime around there.
Eric, what about you? A little later than that? Earlier?
For me, actually, on March 14th, I believe that was a Saturday, I went to my brother's house to play Dungeons and Dragons. And we hadn't played in a while. It was just like a one shot. And I remember driving there and feeling like, should I be going here? Because he's got, a 3-year-old baby, and I work, and what if I have it and I may it? And it was just a very ominous feel. And then we got there and he took my temperature with the little gun on the forehead. And I was like, this is weird. But we played it, went back to work on Monday. And then I think that Friday was actually our last day at work. They had put some plan in motion where we were going to split into 2 teams. One team would work 1 week. The following team would work the next week. And that was it. No more work until mid-May. For Melissa, she had about 1.5 to 2 weeks off of work starting very early in April. So we did have a 2-week chunk of nothing, where we got to play some cool board games. But otherwise, the rest of the year she worked because she's emergency services, and then I went, like I said, I went back to work at May, and it felt like a vacation. It felt strange. We were in I guess a fortunate position. She was working and I was still getting paid.
Mhm.
And I just got to stay home and spend all this time with my daughter, who is now, a whole year later, 18 months old. So it was I was fortunate. A lot of people were not.
Correct. Yeah. And there were some bright sides, which is what we're trying to focus on here. But one of those, you're right, Eric, spending time with your kid, especially that early on when they're still babies. I mean, same thing for Lauren. And again, going back to my question I posed you guys, for me, it was when Lauren's school closed and like every district started to close. And it was like, we're going to close for 2 weeks. It's like, okay, what happens in 2 weeks? I don't know. And then it was like, okay, now it's whatever. It was like, I don't know if they did another 2 weeks or it was like a month after that. It was just a really weird thing.
It's a
And
blur, isn't it? It's
it is a
like,
blur at this point. Yeah, for sure.
I said end of April. I don't know the exact point. I just know the moment, right? But the time seems lost. Is kind of the best way I can describe it.
Yeah. And then for me in particular, I worked at an escape room, which was almost always on the weekends. I mean, I almost always worked on weekends, and to all of a sudden not have weekends to work, it sucked because I wasn't getting paid. But
Right.
it was like, wow, I don't have to like pick one thing to do this weekend. I can't attend both of these, family gatherings because I have to work at least one of those nights. Now, the other side of that is there were no family gatherings
Right.
at that point,
Right.
but it was definitely a weird thing. And so the landscape changed for a lot of people. But we're focused on how our board gaming hobby changed. And, we already sort of mentioned, Eric, you said you were able to get some games to the table. So I think maybe we'll start with that question, actually. What games got played the most? Eric, what games got played the most over this last year-ish for you?
So over the last year, I had some gaming trends some new trends, which dictated the games that I played the most.
Mm-hmm.
So the game that I played the most was Welcome to. We'll get into why a little bit later. The game that I played the second most was Marvel Champions. And the third most was Trails of Tucana. Again, another flip and right. Reason that we played it so much, we'll get into later. And we also, I got an honorable mention there. My fourth and fifth most played games are Wonder Woman Challenge of the Amazons and Wits and Wagers.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what about you? What was getting to your table the most often?
So I track everything and I have way too much data, so I can be pretty precise here. My number one most played, and it makes complete sense based on my family and the fact that this game is quick to set up and you can do a lot of games of it. Onitama. Onitama, which I just love because it's a chess-like game that is always different in the way you move. It's just fun. My number two, which will be no shock to anyone who knows me, is Targi. And then the third one actually surprised me because it came in later in the year, but we just played it so much, is The Crew. The Crew, just a great game to play with people. I will note Draftosaurus and Hive were 4 and 5. But I want to make a point because Eric mentions Marvel Champions, that Marvel Champions would have been probably higher if it was not for the existence of just so many simple, quick to the table games.
Mm-hmm.
Marvel Champions takes a bit to set up. You got to figure out which scenarios and Marvel Champions is a beloved game. It's in my top 10 games. If you're going to ask me my top 10 games right now. So Marvel Champions is loved, but it doesn't crack in plays just because it does take a little bit more time to set up. And so for me, Marvel Champions, a great mention by you, Eric.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I was really surprised because of how much setup and how long the game takes. I was really surprised that ended up being my second most played game. Makes sense though, because I love comic books and board games.
I've got to get
card games.
Play this game. I have to play
you definitely have to play this game.
For me, there was definitely a couple of crossovers with Eric, and as he said, we'll tell you why in a little bit. But Welcome to for sure was up there, probably the most or tied for the most, I think. And to me, that's awesome because of a couple of reasons. One, it's a game that I don't actually own, right? But I have two friends that were kind enough to lend me copies of some score sheets. And so I've played this game, not only the most played game, but I've played all the expansions to this game and I don't own anything. And to me, that's just incredible. The other one that came up there tied for that is a game that I do own everything for myself, and that's Wingspan, which kind of solidified its spot as my favorite game, I think, over this past year, which is pretty cool. And I'm lucky enough to have a wife who loves it as well and who was nice enough to gift me with some pretty cool upgraded components and some storage things for that
Gotta
game.
love the upgrades.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But man, it's the heaviest box ever now because it's just full of cards and like wood and all kinds of stuff.
That's because
But
you
anyway.
don't own Marvel Legendary. You know what I mean, Chris?
Yes.
It's just a box of cards. A huge box of cards.
But other than that, Trails for Tucana definitely is up there as well, and also Fleet the Dice game got a lot of table time.
Right.
So, Eric, let's get the full story here. Why a game like Welcome to got to the table so often?
Well, we're talking about the Quarantiniversary here. So really we're talking about how the quarantine and everything associated with it changed our gaming trends. And for me, at least, and I'm assuming you guys are at least partially on the same side here, the biggest change is Zoom calls and playing games over the computer. And it's not something I've ever done before. I've never done a Skype call really. And we sort of got forced into trying that if we wanted to see human beings instead of just being locked in our houses. And we're in the age of technology. We have webcams on all of our computers and our phones. Why can't we try this? So we did it. And at first it was all about party games. You know, there was Wits and Wagers was one, Just One pretty early on as well. What was another one to play really simply with however many people you could fit on the screen. And then with you, Batista, who's, you know, a real gamer, we started delving into some roll and writes and some flip and writes. And then all of a sudden it started getting interesting. It's not just, hey, you want to play a party game? It's, hey, you want to play one of our favorite games, you know, with Batista and Lauren, even though we're in the middle of a quarantine. And it was amazing because also, you know, we're now an hour and a half away from all of our gaming friends. We moved to Pennsylvania from North Jersey. And so this is a fantastic way to hang out and play board games.
Yeah, agreed. And we were able to get some games to the table earlier than we probably expected to. You know, when your gaming group suddenly gets shrunk down to whoever lives in your house, your choices tend to narrow, right? So looking at your shelf, you're like, well, we can't play that because you need at least 3 players. Can't play that because it's one versus all. Can't play that, blah, blah, whatever. And so, you know, it became, what can we get away with? And we pushed the envelope and we were able to get full on, you know, pretty sizable board games virtually played where we would set up on our end and Eric would set up over there. Jamaica, notably, we played a few times. The Wonder Woman cooperative game, we played, I think, once or twice. What else? Oh,
well,
Tiny
yeah. So
Towns.
I was just talking about the roll and writes, but right. So the roll and writes definitely evolved into larger games like
Right.
Jamaica, Ghost Fighting Treasure Hunters, Tiny Towns. What else did you say? Quacks of Quedlinburg. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm stealing Chris's thunder on that one. we thought about it, but he actually plays. Why don't you go ahead and tell us how that one worked on the computer?
Well, that one worked really well for me. So when I thought about this one, I want to mention Welcome to. I did play Welcome to plenty of times. The big thing in the year, I think, with Welcome to is I have a lot of different roll and writes, so they all got mixed in. And then a game I talked about more recently, I think I even mentioned to Anthony, was on one of the recent videos with him, was On Tour. So On Tour came and then stole the thunder from that game of Welcome to. But the evolution that you're talking to happens on my end with Quacks when someone starts talking about, oh, I own Quacks. Oh, I own Quacks too. okay, if we put the money aside, or we put the not the money, but the chips aside, so to speak, right? And we make sure that we announce what we're taking and we put that aside, we have the exact counts. We could play this game just as if we were playing it together in the same room. Now, I still have never won this game, for the record. Never. Never. My son and wife.
I haven't either. I haven't either.
But the point is, it was one of those games that I thought, oh, we could do this. Like, this is doable. So a lot of those bag building games, very easy to do that. Now, not everyone falls under this category, but Quacks was one of the ones that I tried it with, and it worked great. It works perfectly fine. And I think it's different than playing on something like a Board Game Arena or one of those other places, because there is this example of picking up the piece, right? And that's what's special to me about that physical board game. The online ones have been great and I've loved them, but this was cool to be able to say we can play this bigger game. And Quacks isn't a hard game by any means, but it overcomplicates itself based on the cards you're using, obviously. So
it's in a big box, so it feels like it's a bigger game.
It does feel like a bigger game than it is.
But yeah, Chris, I'm glad you brought up those online platforms, because that's another trend that definitely popped up. And again, these things, I know these things existed before the pandemic. They just came to light to us during this time, and probably for a lot of people. So what are some of the online platforms that you have messed around with, Chris, and which ones do you like?
So I used Tabletopia during Renegade Con, which is actually I know as we are talking and recording this is ongoing again. But I used it during that, and I ended up playing Succulent, ended up buying Succulent because I played it on that. But that's a little bit of rough around the edges. It's not for everyone. Yukata was one that I used. The big one, Board Game Arena, more often than not now, which is really clean, crisp, well developed. And a lot of these are great. I'll note Steam too. I had, even though Scythe was not on my top 3 or top 5 played list, it's partially because I did not log every game at that time that I was playing online. I didn't make that section for it. Now I do. It's sectioned off as BGA or Steam or wherever when I play it. But I played Scythe at one point every Thursday for a lot of weeks at a time on Steam. And I'm still, I love the game, but I still win 1 out of 10 times if I'm even doing well. So it's just one of those games that I just love to lose, I guess. But I love the game, and it played great on Steam. So somebody's got great Steam iterations. And I guess I should point this out. A lot of great games started coming to Steam, the Nintendo Switch, Charterstone as an example, Viticulture. All these games, a lot of these games are on a Switch, but most of these are on iOS and Android. So you saw game development as a whole go to these digital devices. Raiders of the North Sea, one of the best iterations of a digital game I've ever seen, and I don't care what platform you play it on. It plays like the physical on every single digital iteration.
Now, Chris, out of the ones you mentioned, Steam, Board Game Arena, and Tabletopia, which of those cost money?
So this is the neat thing. Steam, you're going to pay for most things. You're going to buy the game. You're going to buy the game itself, not Steam. You don't have to pay for Board Game Arena. If you do, it's $24 a year. I think I paid for this again the other day.
That's not bad.
$24 a year, and that gets you the premium games.
Nice.
And Tabletopia, I don't play it enough. It's more, I don't actually want to, I don't know if there's a premium on Tabletopia. I think there is, but I don't know the big difference to it because I rarely play Tabletopia. It's usually when a designer or a dev says, hey, we want to prototype this. Do you want to check it out? And then I'll jump on Tabletopia with them and play it, or it's part of a con. So.
Yeah, I messed around with it for a little bit, and I think they had like a 30-day free trial or whatever. Yeah. But it was very fiddly, the way to manipulate the pieces and stuff. And it was like almost not worth it for some of the games.
It's like for prototyping to me more than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's what it was made for.
That's what it's perfect for. That's why it's used for that.
Yeah, but I did use and still do use the website Yukata or Yukata, however you pronounce it.
Yukata.de or something.
Right. So it's a German site, I think. And it's free, and it's, a little rough around the edges in terms of the actual layout of the website and whatnot. But once you get past that, you get to play these games for free with people from all over the world. Like there was a point where I was playing 10 to 15 different games of Castles of Burgundy at the same time. Right? And like, there you make your move whenever you can. Sometimes somebody will make a move every like 2 or 3 days, and some people were like, "Oh, let's make a move. Let's play in real time." But yeah, that was a great resource. And another cool thing about it is you can try these games, like you said, like Succulent, and if you like it, you purchase it, and now you have the physical copy in your collection.
Before we move on, I did want to mention that Codenames Online has and Chris, I know you know what I'm talking about, so you're probably a little bit more familiar. But I've played Codenames Online. It was free, and it was really cool to be able to play it. We played it on our phone while we were doing a Zoom call, and it was fun.
Yeah, it's like Codenames.game or something like that. They just announced today, if I'm not mistaken, I saw on Twitter that Duet is available on that as well. So you can play the Duet version. So for those people who are maybe not with their significant other for whatever reason on Valentine's Day or any other special day, you can play Codename Duets. So there you go.
Yeah, it was a very easy platform to use. They did a really good job on
definitely.
that. Very easy. There was one, my only complaint, and maybe it's been fixed and it's very minimal, but if you played multiple games of it, there were almost always like 1 or 2 cards that sort of stayed behind and were in the next array.
Yeah.
The biggest deal, but it just seemed like a little thing that could have probably been fixed, and it may even be fixed by then. So there's that. Thank you, Eric, because I forgot about that. One of the major things that happened in the retail space during this whole lockdown thing was, well, just that. Stores were locked down. They were not open, right? You couldn't really go shopping. So a lot of the essential stores that were open would do curbside pickup or even delivery. And, one of those happens to be our friendly local game store, which in Chris and I's area is Time Warp Comics and Games, although Eric is from our area, so he has frequented that store very often as well.
Oh, I used to get my comics from there.
Yeah. You were on the call list, right? Like, hey, so and so, your new Wolverine came in or whatever, and then you go pick it up.
No, I wasn't at that point. That was that was my first comic book store. But then later in my life, I started buying board games there.
So yeah, Time Warp Comics and Games decided that they were going to still offer, selling their products, and so they took photos of all of their board games and made an online sort of gallery that you could scroll through. I think on their Facebook page, and Lauren and I ordered from them one day, and the guy delivered it in like 10 minutes because it's like right around the corner. It's like,
that's awesome.
Great. Here's a game that like we just now have. And that was really cool. It was a weird time because you were feeling very isolated, and to know that there was still something as simple as a hobby that you like was still out there and accessible, and people were getting it to you is pretty cool. I was happy with how they handle that situation. Chris, did you buy anything from them during that time too? I mean, I'm sure you did.
Yeah, I mean, I have on my desk right now. These are newer ones, but Marvel Champions, any Marvel Champions thing that came in, they were getting for me. I wasn't going. I know there's great ways where you can have them shipped to your house.
Yeah.
I went right for the store, and anytime it came in, they gave it to me. They kept me posted on, okay, there's shipping delays. Here's what's ongoing, and then they'd let me know when it's in, and I'd be able to get it. The best memory I have is I was at another local establishment, Cedar Beans, getting my coffee, where I did pick up at least twice a week, which is because I had drive up to get your coffee. And the owner came over to my car and said, "Hey, no, I got your thing." And so I was picking up my coffee, and I got my game.
That's awesome.
In the I'm like, I did not expect this. This is wonderful.
Best coffee ever.
Yeah, it was good. So I'd say Marvel Champions is a big one. There was definitely other ones along the way, but Marvel Champions was the big one. And they always kept an eye out if there's something I was looking for. I mean, I was in there even recently and got Dune Imperium, and they pulled that out of they pulled that out for me and put it aside. And some games that were harder to get, and that's what they were doing during the harder game, and all the games were harder to get. Let's put it that way. So it was a huge help to have, a friendly local game store to have your back during that time.
Nice. Yeah, one of the ones we picked up was Just One, which got a lot of online plays over Zoom because all you really need is a paper and something to write with,
Right.
and anybody can play that game. So we got played that. In fact, going back to when we talked about the games that got played the most, that one was up there for me, but it was on the list for a different reason, which was I played it with the most unique people over this year. I played Just One with 12 different people. Not at one time, over all the course of all the plays. I thought that was pretty cool.
Just to throw this out there, because we brought it back up, Wits and Wagers, just like Just One, another party game, very easy to play. All you need is a piece of paper and a pen. That one got a lot of play. That one, the same as Just One. The party games definitely came through big.
For sure. Eric, what about your friendly local game store? What were they doing down there?
So my friendly local game store is called Looking for Games, and they have your entrance door, and then there's a little bit of a vestibule, and then another entrance door into the store. So the store was closed, obviously, but they went out and bought like a little locker that you could order a game. They took all their games, just like Time Warp did. They took all their games, took pictures, put them up on the internet. You could, look through the games, order one, pay for it. They would email you out the code for the locker. You would come in, put in the code, get your game. And it was fun. It was cool. And during this time, especially, I remember thinking, I'm new here, right? I've only lived in this area for a year and a half. I don't have local businesses that I want to support, except my game store. So I wanted to make sure that I spent as much money, as much time, everything at that place, as opposed to, because everybody's buying everything on Amazon and the internet and stuff like that because they don't want to go out.
Mm-hmm.
I felt really happy to be able to give them a lot of business, or a decent amount of business, because, not made out of money.
Eric, when people made it safe to do so too, it made you, I don't know, it was really, there was something about that. Like, I could speak for Time Warp in that sense. What's the fact was that they made you feel really safe about the process. You knew what was going on in the world, but they made it feel really like, you can shop here and we've got your back. And you wanted to give that money to them, as opposed to Amazon, where you could shave off 30%, because if we don't buy the games, they're not going to bring the games to us. And I talk about discovery with friendly local game stores and those local shops. I discover new games. I walk in the door and I say, I've never heard of this. What is this? Because things slip through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without them, we'd be missing a lot. So expressing that gratitude with our wallets, if we're lucky enough to be able to, I should stress, because
right.
But that's also
an expensive hobby.
Yeah. That's why I also think it comes with gifting and things like that. A lot of it was buying gift cards from these places.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Moving on to the next phase here of Quarantiniversary, we talked about the games that got played the most often. Besides those, I want to know if there were any games that you guys sort of finally got to the table. Maybe a game that had never been played before, and for whatever reason, you just have the time now, and it finally got out as a first play, and how that went for you. So Chris, do you have any of those in particular?
Well, so I will mention one. There's a game I got off Kickstarter, and I have the big box for it. But just because I have the big legendary box for it does not necessarily mean it gets the plays it deserves. But that is a game called Maximum Apocalypse. It's really good. It's probably not known by as many people as it should, but that one's a big box. It's got scenarios. It's all these sorts of different situations. Such a fun card game. You've got a deck of cards, and you've got cards on the table for where you're moving your players around, and it's just really good. So that one came out. But the biggest thing, and as I go look at this, I have probably about almost 200 games that are just the base game. In my basement and in my house as a whole. And in this time frame, I have it up here, 47% of my base games were played. That's really significant because that's the variety. There's a lot of heavy games in there, but I'm not going to play with my wife and son. Battlestar Galactica, I joke about is a great game, but I'd love to get to the table. I've got, Firefly. Some of these games aren't going to play well with 2 players. And even Rebellion, a fantastic Star Wars 2-player game, my son's not quite. I don't think I'm ready to do that with him. So some of them we're going to sit on the shelf. That's okay, but almost 50%. I'm pretty happy with that one.
Yeah,
that's big.
That's incredible. Eric, what about you? I know you and I don't have those fancy stats because we just write things in a book. But you have to have a couple games that got first plays, right?
So I got my book. I checked it out. We did. So there was a number of games that we picked up at PAX Unplugged early December of 2019. Also, we got some games for Christmas. And by March, when everything happened, yes, we got a few of those to the table. But most notably, what we got to the table was Seventh Continent. And we've had this game on our shelf for like a year, and we were just too busy. We didn't have enough time. It's always one excuse after another as to why you don't want to dive into this big, huge game. So we finally got that to the table. We played it for like 3 or 4 days straight, and we loved it. And then, we packed it all up and put it away. Haven't played it since. Not because it's not good. It's a lot, and we got a baby at home. So, but yeah, we got that one to the table, and that was really cool that we were finally able. We had that time. We had 2 weeks off, and that's when we got that one to the table.
So maybe next Quarantiniversary you'll play it again.
I don't want another quarantine.
True.
But yes, if we get one, we're going to play Seventh Continent again.
So what are the unique things or something that was new to Lauren and I that we hadn't done before? It was not a particular game, but we actually did a board game subscription service. Particularly, this one is called Unbox Boredom. So I encourage you to check them out. They have different, plans that you can do. We signed up for. We did this as sort of like a joint birthday gift, I believe. And so we did the every other month plan. So every 2 months, on the first of that month, we get an email with 3 possible game choices that they're featuring that month. And you just pick one. And then a couple of days later, you get it. So actually today, in particular, we got our February game. One of these unlocked 3-in-1 things. So I'm looking forward to that.
I like the art of the Wizard of Oz on that one. That looks cute.
Yeah. I think we might save that one for last. It looks pretty cool. But what was cool about this was that, we got our hands on some games that A, we may have not known about at all, right? And B, that we know about or I knew about, but maybe would just not have ever really reached out to buy. And, that was pretty cool. And we got a few really good games that got to the table really often because of that. The first one we got was a game called Remnants, which I'd never heard of before, but I forget what the other 2 choices were. I believe one of them was a game we already had, and I forget what the other one was. So we went with this one. Didn't seem like I was going to like it. It's a post-apocalyptic real-time dice rolling dice and then grabbing resources from the board. Did not seem like it would be my cup of tea. But we played it, I think, like 3 times in like 2 weeks, which is a lot for a new game. So I was surprised by that. And, we also got games that were kind of new, and I don't really always get the hottest games because, I don't know, I don't pay for them a lot up front. I would wait till they're like on sale or something.
Yeah.
But we got Santa Monica, which was a new game, and I was pretty impressed and happy that I got to play a game like that, and we loved it. So there was a few more, but those just a couple. Highly recommend that service, by the way. You can even get, I think, as low as maybe 4 games in the year, and then you can go as high as 1 every month. Like I said, we took the middle ground on that one.
Just to add on to that, we also have Santa Monica, and it's a game that came out in 2020, so it sort of works for the Quarantiniversary. We love the game, and for some reason, this game got no love on everybody's top 10 games of 2020 lists. Santa Monica was a great game that came out in 2020.
I wonder if we could play that over Zoom.
I don't know. We'll have to check it out.
Because I know the cards are numbered, so you would at least be able to find the cards easily, I guess, if you put them in order. So there's one final thing I wanted to talk about that happened during this whole quarantine and here on our Quarantiniversary episode. And it's ironic because I didn't think I would have something called an episode. And that's what I'm talking about is we all three of us started creating online board game content during this whole lockdown thing, something that I never really expected to happen. I mean, I kind of wanted to, I guess, from the first time I saw, like the Dice Tower and things on YouTube and whatnot.
Right.
And so I finally took that plunge, and I'm really glad I did because now I get to be on Board Game Breakfast, and I get to, have videos that I do with Chris on certain subjects and Eric on other subjects, and just meet random people through the hobby that you can connect with. Chris, I know this is sort of a renaissance for you. You had done a lot of this stuff earlier, not about board games, right? How did that start out?
I used to do. I've been in social media for a long time, basically since it was a profession. And the interesting thing is, I had a podcast, and I had a fairly successful podcast. I made income off that podcast. I mean, it did really well. And that was why I social. And I talked to people. I went behind the scenes, so to speak, and you got to know social media personalities for who they were, not best practices, that sort of stuff. And that went into another podcast. And so I had the podcasting background. I also had a digital media background as a whole, but I had not been front and center on anything. I'd been behind the scenes or a voice, right, for a long time. The last time I had done anything front and center was when I did theater back in high school and college. So for me to get in front of a camera was, I was anxious, right? But for me, I had also said I want to do this. So Tabletop Express had been an idea for a long time. I had the Twitter handle, I think, for 2.5 years. I wasn't doing much with it, but I was doing some things. And really, to create the YouTube channel was just fun for me. It was about bringing joy. It was about talking about board games. And to me, it was about collaboration because, for example, you've come on. I have a friend, Ryan, who's come on, who's also local to me. Then I've had all these other people join the show. And it came to a point where I said, well, what can I do with this? How do I segment this? And I came with the segmentation and even said, yeah, let me do something like what I was doing. So I created Creators Corner, and I had, some really cool people come on, Jamie Stegmeyer, Shem Phillips, guys who I'd love to talk to. And here's the thing. I took this approach and I learned these people really are just human, right? And I mean, and I knew that, but they were so nice, so kind. And so for me, it just opened the world. And I hope to continue to open that world. There's a lot of people been doing board games on YouTube and other places for a really long time. And to me, it's a matter of, earning respect, making some good content, and really, most importantly, because I don't like to think about as content as much as bringing joy. And that is the joy of a hobby. And if you can help one or two people, I just cite the fact that I had a conversation on Twitter today where someone brought me into the conversation. I recommended about 10 to 15 games based on the games that they like right now. And those little things, that's what matters.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to be a Dice Tower or a Man vs. Meeple or anything like one of those things, but you don't need to be. What you need to be is you. And to me, that's just been fun. So I love it. I have a great time, and I get to meet a lot of really cool people along the way. So I'm going to keep doing it.
Agreed. Yeah, you got some really cool guests on there, and everyone has been really welcoming. I think even Eric on your end, in terms of just Instagram, I know that's your main focus, and you've gotten many comments on your photographs from people that you just never knew before, right?
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to shout out to Chris that when I saw he had Jamie Stegmeyer appearing, doing an interview with him, I was super impressed, bro. That's cool. That was really cool. That being said, yes. So I take pictures of board games and I'm active on it. I look at other people. I follow other accounts that do the same kind of stuff. And when I see a game that either I'm interested in or I have something to say about it, I'm going to send a comment out. I'm going to leave a comment. And the more you do that, this is such a fantastic community, the board gaming community, the people that put out this content, take pictures. Board game art is huge. It's a really welcoming environment. Everybody's super friendly, and it's nice, especially in a quarantine, to just reach out and start having a conversation with somebody about a game that, hey, oh, you're interested in this game? I've played it. I love it. I actually own this expansion, and I think it totally makes the game better. And that, like Chris was saying, it's such a great feeling when you can help somebody find possibly their next new favorite game, which is, what I'm always looking for. Anytime a game comes out, I'm like, oh, is that my new favorite game potential? Like, I want to get that then. And so that's what keeps me going. The next game, is it the next best game I've ever played in my life? It's just, it's cool. I like it.
Yeah. For the first time, I also experienced like people asking me for recommendations, like you were talking about too. And that was just cool. Be like, well, what should I get for, a kid who's this age and this age? And I'm like, well, if they like this and they play this, maybe they like this game. And that's fun.
Yeah.
That's why the first videos I really put together were around the holidays. And it was, if you like this old school game Clue, you should check out this game Outfoxed. And it was just a cool way to sort of try to bridge that gap, right? And introduce new people to the hobby, which is what we were trying to do.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to wrap things up here. But before that, gentlemen, is there anything else you'd like to mention that we didn't touch on during this whole quarantine lockdown period? Chris, let's start with you.
Well, I would say you talked about the shelf of shame, or as I've heard really well said on the internet, the shelf of opportunity.
I like it. I like it
so much better, right? I don't know who coined that phrase, so I'm not going to try and say. But right prior to, I picked up 2 games because I was getting really excited about, okay, great year coming ahead, right? I was really optimistic, and I'm still optimistic about this year. And I got 2 games, and one of them, my friend, was this. This is Betrayal Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
That was intended to be played with you. Obviously it wasn't played. And I think that's the thing that I missed, right? Is the getting together physically for something like that, the legacy game.
Yeah.
Because the legacy games are arguably still booming, right? They're still, they maybe slowed down a little bit, but they're still coming out. You've got 3 pandemics, right? 3 pandemics are out, if I'm not mistaken. Season 1, 2, and season 0, which apparently is the best of the bunch from something have told me. I don't know. But I got that. I also have a copy of Clank Legacy. I got these for some different groups, and disappointed I couldn't play them. So that's one thing that I do remember, and I look forward to the joy that's going to come when I do get to play them, because it's going to be reuniting at a table with some of these people who I haven't got to physically sit down for a game with.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I want to focus on that positivity in a time when I feel like it's just more important than ever. So for me, I'm going to look forward to playing those games, and they're going to get played, and they're going to get played with the same groups that they were originally intended to play with. So that's kind of what I wanted to get out there.
Nice. And Eric, you did get one of those to the table, right?
Right. So I actually got Pandemic Legacy Season 2 to the table about a week or 2 before the pandemic, which was very ironic. I did want to bring up a couple of things. Number one is that the pandemic and just the social distancing and everything really affected a lot of companies. One of these companies is IKEA. And so I've been trying to get a new board game shelf for months, and it's been out of stock all across the country. And it's crazy. And, they're making a lot of new desks and home office supplies and everything. And I get it. People that want board game shelves are just, I guess lower in terms of who they really want to cater to or pander to at this
priority.
Time. Yeah, lower priority. That's a good. So that's kind of a bummer, because I've now got like just this wall back here. There's not even a shelf in this section right here. It's just games stacked on top of games because I don't have any room anymore.
Eric's making shelves made from board games.
And I got a closet over here that's filled with games too. I want to get this stuff out here. That being said, this pandemic has opened my eyes and allowed me to discover video chat, right? And video chat has then turned into gaming on the computer. And that's just fantastic for me, because I don't live close to my gaming friends anymore. I'm 3.5 hours in the car between, going there and back. That ruins a weekend. And plus we have an 18-and-a-half-month-old child. We just don't have the time. So one good thing that came out of this terrible time is the fact that I can now hang out with friends of mine on the computer and play board games. And I played more board games with friends this year when I wasn't leaving the house than than I did last year, because I just wasn't going up. I wasn't spending that much time in the car. We'd hang out with friends maybe 5-6 times a year. We've already done that. Done these Zoom calls at least a dozen times this year, and it's great. It's changed the way that I'm going to play games forever. I'm always going to be, if my wife and I want to play games, it's going to be, hey, do you want to play a game? Yeah. What do you want to play? Oh, I don't know. Do you want to see if anybody wants to play something, on the internet, or do you want to just play a 2-player game? And so it's a positive light in a dark time. And so I'm just going to take it and roll with it. I love it.
For sure. I think you're right. I think it's one of the trends that's going to stay even after things get back to normal, so to speak, because like you said, you can have like a true weekly game night, almost easier way to set up than you would in person to some extent.
And I would even say, as I look ahead, I look to the year to say that, look, and I think about it positively, this is going to end at some point, and we're going to be able to get back to whatever the normal is. And regardless of what that looks like, it's going to mean at some point we get together again, right? I was talking about that with playing some of these legacy games, but board game weekend, a weekend away for 2-3 days with friends. I think people are going to do that. I think that's going to be something that happens. I think that's what is going to occur.
I hope so.
Miss that. But you're going to make it. It's going to be special. And you're going to celebrate in that way, that time that you get to have together and appreciate it. So I think appreciating that kind of thing is, it might seem, again, for anyone in the hobby, they get that, right? That a time with people to play games, it does matter. And like I said, I'm lucky Anthony's nearby, and we could do something like this, but we haven't hit the table together in a long time. So the day we get to do it again, I'm really excited for it. And I'm hoping it's sooner than later.
Yep. I agree. More fun in 2021, I always say, or have said maybe 3 or 4 times. But anyway, that's it for us here. Thanks for sharing and keeping up with us in this ramblings and whatnot for our Quarantiniversary. You can check out all those cool videos that Chris was talking about on his channel, the Tabletop Express, over on YouTube, all his interviews and whatnot. And also, please check out Eric's Instagram account at the Meeples Republic for those phenomenal board game photos we were mentioning earlier. And if you could possibly like this video and perhaps even subscribe to my channel, Board Game Dads, I would greatly appreciate it.